The Verona Quartet's debut album features three pieces that were kind of famous losers in their time. But the quartet points out that playing old music like it's new can give these pieces a second chance via our fresh perspective today. They told me all about it in this look behind the playlist.
So you talk about cultural migration as a big part of this album. In what way is cultural migration, as you say, a big part of your identity?
Well, I would say that it's very important because, of course, as the four members, we're each from a different country, and in a way, sort of coming to America, where we're based, of course, and sort of a country mostly of immigrants. It's an interesting sort of comparison, I think, and this music. I mean, it's just how we inspire one another when we're working together, I think. And I think that the music, how it takes inspiration, not only from the sort of folk cultures in which they're from, but also, for instance, on this album, Szymanowski, for instance, I think really bridges nicely this sort of gap between the sort of impressionistic, almost the French influence of things that you have from the Ravel, and then more of that sort of local folk sort of culture akin to Bartok, and also the Janacek and Szymanowski shared a cultural region, Silesia.
Well, also, if anyone's interested in knowing where we're all from, I'm just going to say where I'm from, and I'll let everybody else kind of introduce themselves. I'm Jonathan. I am from Singapore. I play the violin. I'm one of the violinists in the quartet. And I came to the States when I was about 16. Actually went to the Eastman School of Music for my undergrad, and then, traveled all around the States and finally landed in Indiana, where I met Abigail and, started the quartet.
I'm Dorothy. I'm the other violinist, and I grew up in Canada, in Nova Scotia, which is East Coast, and I've been in the States for over a decade now. So I almost feel like I'm more American than Canadian. But I did my undergraduate in Cleveland, Ohio, actually, and that's where I met Jonathan, and we were in a different quartet prior to Verona. So we have a little history there, and then joined this quartet, moved to Indiana, and the rest is history with the quartet.
I'm Abigail. I'm violist of the quartet, and I'm the sole American. So I was born and raised in California, and then I moved east and east and east and cycled through states before coming back to Ohio, where we're based now.
And I'm Jonathan, the other Jonathan. Everybody calls me JD, and I'm from the UK originally. And sort of in contribution to Abby, I actually keep moving west instead of east every few years. And I came to the United States to study, and then in Boston and Los Angeles, and I wasn't a founding member of the Verona Quartet, but I was sort of joined later on, about getting on to 5 years now. So.
JD touched a little bit on this before, but which global traditions do you feel like weave together within the music of the album?
Well, if you take the Ravel, for instance, the second movement is probably quite inspired by gamelan music from Indonesia. At this time, sort of early turn of the century turn of 20th century, there was the World Fair that took place in Paris, and it was quite likely that some of those traditions from Asia were brought along. Of course, maybe in nowadays sort of terms, we might sort of look upon it with, sort of a bit of distaste to how some of those traditions were brought into sort of Western society. But nonetheless, it's done with, I think, really genuine intention, and it's not meant to be sort of kitschy or anything like. And I don't think it sounds like that. But the way that the music layers in the revel, you have the pizzicatos of the strings, and you hear the sort of layering of rhythms, which is sort of how the gamelan music works. Which is you sort of have a bass sort of slow rhythm, and then you add on top of it a layer that goes a little bit faster, and then faster still. So you have this incredible tapestry, if you like, in the music. So I think that's a really nice example.
We have a direct reference to gamelan music because Jonathan, you grew up playing in a gamelan ensemble, right? So
Right.
we were able to you were able to advise us on how it should be.
I did play gamelan, not extremely professionally, I will say, but I did have a couple of weeks of having to learn how to play it in an ensemble. So yeah, I like to think that helped add something to our performance.
Leo Janacek, who we haven't really touched on that much, exchanged 700 love letters with Kamila Sportsbolek. I think I have that right. She was 38 years younger than him and married, as was he. And she was, if I read right, a rather well-regarded soprano. So just to identify, see how well you identified with the music, who's had an awkward celebrity crush?
I feel like I can't speak on behalf of all of us, but I'm pretty sure we all have our celebrity crushes. And I'll go first and embarrass myself. They're gonna laugh at me, but I currently really admire the actor Cillian Murphy. He's an Irish actor, and if he's mostly well known for the show Peaky Blinders. I don't know and he was recently in a film that just came out, A Quiet Place Part 2. Anyway, I really, really admire his work, and my quartet always makes fun of me because I would say I'm mildly obsessed with him. Just mildly.
I'm a big Marvel fan, so Black Widow, Scarlett Johansson, that was my celebrity crush for a while. I remember, I can't wait actually. It's coming out July 9th, the movie. So it's not really a plug for the movie, but Scarlett Johansson.
Well, I'm a big tennis fan, so I really like this tennis player who's actually now retired, but Agnieszka Radwanska. Maybe you don't know, but she was known for sort of her deft touch and amazing sort of kind of intricate shots, and I just think she's a very interesting person.
I personally will leave a little to mystery, but but I don't think any one of us has taken any celebrity or any other sort of hint at an obsessive or some curiosity and turned it into something as extraordinary as the quartet that Janacek wrote. So yeah, it was a bit beyond. This final love letter in the form of a quartet, though, is, if you think about it, it's the masterpiece that's living forever and is inviting us to consider these things so deeply. And on top of all of that, he completely changed the direction that musical language was going in, and he offered up a new way of writing that was almost, speaking of movies and film, almost like a film. When you hear it, it switches character on a dime. I mean, just like a scene cutting, and suddenly there's something completely different going on in another arena. And that was how his brain was working. But it's just an extraordinary way to write, and listening to it has that sort of almost manic feeling. It puts you in a frame of mind that's just so extraordinary.
Thinking about that, there's so many pieces of classical music that do really tell the story of a complicated relationship. And classical music is becoming so much more attentive to sort of the relationships that musicians have with each other, and taking more care, taking steps to take more care about that, knowing the current environment, but also knowing these are really interesting stories to tell and they happened a long time ago. How do you approach a piece of music like this with your 2021 lenses on your eyes, so to speak?
Well, I'll just go first, and I'll just say that the one thing that probably hasn't changed is they're still human beings. So the things that we're doing now, it's not that those things didn't happen. If you're like, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, whatever, it's just that the sort of social context was different. And so I think it's really important that when we're approaching that, we're really aware of those social contexts in which we're preparing. And I think it's really important to understand the tradition from which the music comes from in each culture. I mean, I think especially, with the sort of recording culture that has happened in classical music, I think what's changed so much is that it's just that the styles of each culture, there was definitely more national schools of playing, if you like. And when we've had recordings over years, what's happened is we sort of made everything into sort of, boxes of quote unquote perfection. And I think that the sort of styles from across the globe have sort of come closer together. So it's a little bit, as a 21st century musician, about trying to delve back into what the flavor is from each culture of the music, and also then be able to sort of bring it back into something that's sort of relevant into today's musical language, and something that we feel that we can totally own, and something that we can really put our own stamp on, and that it has that sort of Verona Quartet little signature on it, if you like.
Yeah, I also feel like, one of the things that made this music possible, the Ravel, the Janacek, the Szymanowski, was really, this was at the turn of the century, the late 1800s, early 1900s was when the Industrial Revolution really kind of kicked off a whole new wave of like intercultural exploration. And I think, right now we just have so much available to us at our fingertips, online. We can do so much more research. We can find out so much more about different cultures, understand more about where people came from, and what their cultural background, kind of how it affects the way they see music and the way they see art. And so I think as a 21st century musician, we actually have so much more information to go off on, and to help us to understand how to play a piece of music. So if anything, I think it's much more exciting now when we look back at music from that time. We have so much more that we can glean from what's available to us.
Just to add to that, there's a great quote from the Juilliard String Quartet. I believe it was Bobby Mann, the first violinist, and he used to say, play old music like new music, like it's new music, and play new music like it's old music. And I think that's such a valuable thought to think about. We have, like Jonathan was saying, we have all this information at our fingertips, and it's very easy to take advantage of that, but to just remember that when we play these older pieces from the past, to always have a fresh set of ears, and always be exploring and being curious about the music, because music is such a intangible thing, and it's always changing. And I think it's really special when you're just you know, you hear many different interpretations of musicians putting, you know, their foot, their stamp on it. And we're excited that ours is now out there in the form of our album.
The Janacek Quartet is love letters, but it's also sort of a tale of unrequited love. And then the Szymanowski Quartet, when it lost a big competition, Szymanowski said, I didn't even like the piece anyway. And then the Ravel Quartet got him kicked out of school. Did you feel a special kinship with these pieces, in addition to the cross-cultural connections that they were building, with the fact that each of these composers was a bit of a mess, and this last year and a half was just kind of a bit of a mess?
To be honest, I don't think we made that connection. That's new for us. I think it was probably subconscious. You know, isn't that something though? You're talking about, you know, the Szymanowski Quartet was a loser, right? Like, and that he said he didn't even like it. I mean, Bartok obviously famously had said, you know, competitions are for horses, not musicians. And I think that that's one of, like Jonathan was saying, that's one of the beautiful things about looking through a retrospective lens at something, is that in some ways we can understand it even better than people did at the time, even though perhaps they had more of a sense of familiarity with the cultural environment or with the social environment. But now we have this perspective. And so we can look at a piece of music that at the time was a loser and we can say, wait a minute, there is something magical in this. And what came after it was affected by it. And actually, maybe it was just not the moment for it, but now is the moment for it. You know, and these are the things there. It's not, none of it is black and white. There are so many sort of, you know, for lack of a better term, and actually very appropriately, you know, so many shades of interpretation that diffuse around a piece of music, or between people, relationships, as you say. You know, there's so much to be learned beyond ourselves. And if something appears black and white to us, we know that we're not seeing it clearly, because there's such a wealth of information around us. All we have to do is open our minds and open our hearts and listen to others. And that's something that we, as we said in the beginning, we value so much in our quartet, you know, is just doing those things to become greater than our individual selves. So yeah, so they might have been a mess and broken and losers and all of that, but you know what? We didn't see that. We saw just three extraordinary pieces that were just beautiful to listen to, remarkable to play, and could show us something about ourselves today and how to move forward in the future.
Well, hopefully the world is about to be less of a mess over the next year. I think a great way to wrap up is to ask each of you, what are you looking the most forward to, either as a quartet or as individual performers, as people who are gonna get back on the stage?
Well, for me personally, I love the energy of being in a room with an audience. So from a performing perspective, it's definitely about sharing the moment with an audience, but also just I also love the traveling aspect of being a musician. So I think a little bit of both of those things.
Well, okay, I'll I thought we had some kind of order going on, but I guess we're going from the base up. You know, to be totally frank, and it was this way for everybody in different ways, but there were so many obstacles to getting anything, you know, to doing anything really, to playing a concert or recording something or anything. And I'm just looking forward to sort of having an idea and being able to make it happen with fewer obstacles.
Mine's pretty basic. I'm just looking forward to being able to hug people. You know, as simple as that is, but there's something about, you know, the physical touch and the connection with another human being. And I'm looking forward to doing that, and just, being around audiences, real people. communicating, playing for them?
The Verona Quartet will walk around with free hug signs like at concerts. No, not yet. We're not ready. Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, we teach at the Oberlin Conservatory and College and Conservatory, and I'm just looking forward to being able to see my students without their masks on for the first time, and being able to talk to an audience member after a reception. It's those simple things that we take for granted, and then we don't have them for a year and a half, and then you realize, wow, it's something you really, really miss.
Diffusion by the Verona Quartet is available in all your usual playlist download spots, and you'll also hear it on 90.5 WUOL Classical Louisville.